Hi everyone! This time I would create a really simple shader that can be quite useful if we need to make a smooth transition from one image to another. I experimented with it a bit while working on a side project. Let's take a look at what such a shader might look like. So, as usual, I have the Godot game engine editor open in version 4, and I will start by creating a new 2D scene, which I will name Transition. So right click, create new scene, Transition. Okay. We'll add an image to the scene, which I have prepared here below and comes from our game, which I have mentioned a few times before. Adding image to the 2D editor automatically creates a sprite 2D node, which I'll open in the editor and the inspector and reset its position to 0, 0, and in the offset let's cancel the centered and zoom out a little bit to see everything. Great. Very well. Now we just need to create a new shader material into which we'll add a new shader right here. Material, new shader material, click, shader, new shader, canvas item. This is correct. Transition GD shader. Just let's put it to the shaders editor and create and click again to open in the shader editor. Okay, let me delete everything we don't need, so that would leave only the fragment function. 1, 2. Perfect. So, as I said, we'll create a smooth transition from the image we see in front of us to another image, and for this we will use a noise texture, which we can easily generate in Godot. If you're working in another engine where the noise texture support is more complicated, you can create a similar texture in a bitmap editor or download one and then use it as an external resource. But in Godot, I will work with what Godot makes easier. So I'll add a new uniform parameter that will make this texture accessible in the code. Uniform sampler 2D, let's call it noise texture and give it the parameter repeat enable. The parameter repeat enable means that this texture will repeat infinitely. This is important because, as we'll soon see in the inspector, we will create a square texture, but our image is a rectangle. Without repeat enable, we wouldn't cover its entire area. So let's take a look at the shader parameters right here, and the noise texture is here. This time we can stick with the default settings and won't need to change anything. So I will simply create new noise texture 2D, click it, scroll down, and at the noise part I will create a new fast noise light. We can click it to see how it looks. So that's done, and what's next? The noise texture serves for the transition state, but we need to know what we actually want to transition to. So I will add a second uniform parameter, which would be named second texture. Uniform sampler 2D, second texture, and this time I'll give it the hint default black. Why did I use the hint default black parameter? In the second image, if the second image is not available, this option ensures that a default black texture is inserted into the parameter. If I didn't do this, an empty value would mean a white texture. Now, we also need a parameter to control the transition itself. Let's add it. Uniform float threshold with a hint range from 0 to 1, and let's give it step 0.01, and we will start at 0, which means there is no transition, and 1 would mean that the image was completely transposed to the second one. Everything in between is the transition state. So what's left is to program this transition in the fragment function. The algorithm is simple. We get the color of the pixel from the first and second textures, and then, based on the grayscale value of the noise texture, we decide, according to the value of the threshold parameter, whether to use the first or second texture for the final color. Let's do it. I'll delete this comment, and first I'll define the final color, which we the init state take from the second texture, textura, and UV coordinates, and of course texture function returns a vector 4 including the alpha channel, so I will just add RGB. Okay, this is vector 3. Now we need to take the noise level that would be obtained from the noise texture, noise texture, UV, but this time we want a float value, so we then can take only the R component, because this is a grayscale image, so all RGB components have the same value. We can take any of them. And now the decision: if noise level is greater than the threshold, let's replace the color with the original texture. Texture, UV, and again RGB. Alright, texture simply refers to the image we applied the material on. Okay, and finally we need to assign it to the internal variable color, which is vector 4, so it would be composed of our vector 3, sorry, it already is vector 3, so we just write color and 1 for the alpha value. Very well, so we can go ahead and test how such a transition looks. Let's try it. Here it is, threshold, and I'm slowly moving to 1. Okay, it's black. This is our default value. Hint the default black, and let's go back to 0. Great. Easy, right? But still, we don't have the second texture onto which we would perform this transition. As we see in the inspector, the second texture parameter is empty. So let's drag another texture from our game, which I have prepared here, into it. This green one. I'll drag it over there. It can be seen here. And now if I move the parameter again, we can see the transition. Great. At this point, we could say that the shader was finished, but I rarely settle for the basic solution, and I like to explore possibilities for improvement. One of them could be addressing the issue that the noise texture stretched to cover the entire rectangle, even though it's defined as a square. We can easily fix this by recalculating the aspect ratio, as we already did in our previous videos, of course. So let me do it here. Vector 2 UV would be set to our UV coordinates, and we need to define the resolution, which can be taken from the current texture pixel size. And finally, let's recalculate the aspect ratio. UVX would be multiplied by resolution X divided by resolution Y. Okay, this is done. And now if I move it to somewhere to the half, we can see, maybe we cannot see, but if I comment out this line, we should see a difference. Okay, why don't we see it? Of course, because I forgot to take the new UV coordinates to use them in the noise texture right here, UV in lowercase. Now we can see the difference. Can you see it? I'll just comment it out again. This is the original state, the rectangle, it's stretched, and now if I fix the aspect ratio, it is taken as a square and repeated. We can simply decide what suits us more in our case. So we have a complete shader now. I'll just revert to the original threshold value. But how do we use it in the game? It would certainly be useful if we could activate this transition, for example, by clicking the mouse. Let's add a script to our scene and do exactly that. So I will just click here to create a new GD script, create, and it's opened. And I delete everything except the process function. We don't need ready right now, and we don't need this comment. So first, I'll tell you what we'll do, then I'll do it, and finally I'll describe it once more. So we'll need to create a reference to the sprite2D node of the original image, from which we'll get the material, and then we can call a function to set the shader parameter on it, this one. We'll do this, this one, threshold, sorry. We'll do this in the process function to ensure a smooth transition over 1 second. Additionally, we need to define variables to control the current state of the transition. And finally, the code that captures mouse clicks and initiates this whole process. Let's do it. But first of all, we'll need to define an action that captures the mouse click. In project settings, let's switch to input map and add new action called clicked. Sorry, I already have it here. Okay, first I'll get rid of it so I can do it again. Okay, and now if it's empty, we used clicked and add it. And now click the plus and click the left mouse button. So the left mouse button is captured and will be used as the click action. Very well. And now the script. So as I said, we'll start with dragging while holding the control key and release the mouse. So it created this nice onReady declaration. And now we need the variable to control the threshold parameter. And the initial value is 0. Then we will do this effect to transition from the first image to the second and back. So we need to know which direction we are currently using. It would be either 1 or -1. And finally, let's add a flag which would be set to true if the transition is currently being processed, and to false if it's finished. Alright, and now the process function. So first of all, let's capture the mouse button. If input is action just pressed, so it's not repeated, and we already have this clicked in the code completion, perfect. So if it happens, we set the transition flag to true. And now, if it is set to true, let's do this. The threshold value would be increased by the delta value and multiplied by the direction value. And now to send the parameter, so screen 404, our sprite2D, we need to get its material and set shader parameter, which is called threshold, and the value is threshold. Okay, and once we reach the destination, which would be 1 in this case, we need to stop the transition. So if threshold is either lower than 0, just in case we switch the direction to -1, or threshold is greater than 1, transition is over, so we'll set it to false. And of course, it could happen that we reach a negative value or something greater than 1 slightly, so it would be better to just fix that. Transition, no, threshold, sorry, is, we'll clamp it to the range threshold from 0 to 1, so it never gets outside this range. And finally, we need to switch direction for the next mouse click, -1. It's multiplied by -1, so if it was 1, it will turn to -1. If it was -1, multiplied by -1 gives us +1 again. And that's all. Let's try to run the scene. Okay, and I click the mouse. Nice. I click it again. Perfect. There. Back. Okay, it seems I forgot to do something to exit the program, so I'll just kill it right here. Very well. So I think it works well, and if you wanted a slower transition, you would just divide the increment of the variable threshold by a number of seconds. So let's try it here. Duration would be, let's say, 3 seconds, and we need the threshold divide by duration. Let's try it. It should be slower now. I'm clicking now. 1, 2, 3, and again click. 1, 2, 3. Great. Kill. What else could be improved? Maybe not everyone prefers to set the second image directly in the shader parameters right here. Sometimes it might be better to do it in GDScript as well. There are several ways to accomplish this. For example, we could insert the second image into the scene and use a direct reference to it. So I will duplicate this node and drag the second image into it. But of course, if we click to 2D, we can see the original image is replaced by this one, so we need to just click this I to disable it. But this is already the second parameter in the script. We need to drag it here. Okay, with control. This is already the second parameter that we'll be sending to the shader. Let's enhance our code to avoid repeating the process of obtaining the material reference right here. First, however, I'll remove the second image from the shader parameters to demonstrate that it works even without it. So select again and remove it. Clear. Now it's empty. Great. And the code itself. So I created reference to the second image, and now we will need the ready function. So I'll put it back. Ready, and we will, no, first I will define the reference, the variable to keep the material. Let's call it mat, because material is already defined in node 2D, so we cannot use it. This name, and now mat would be this part, screen for and get material, and we can replace it here by mat. And we need to set this second image to the shader. So it would be done like this: mat set shader parameter, which is, if I'm not mistaken, second texture. Yes, let me copy that. And sorry, misclick. Second texture, and the value is screen 5, I mean, but this is sprite 2D. We need to send the texture, so let's use the texture field. Okay, and now I think that's all. Let's run the scene again, and this time nothing is in the second texture, but it will work anyway. Start and click. Yeah, it's working. There and back. Perfect. But what if we don't want to insert additional images into the scene and would rather use them dynamically? There's nothing easier than loading the second image as a resource, like this. So first I will get rid of this reference. Oh, sorry. 1, 2 here. And of course we don't do this. And we can delete it from the scene tree as well if we want to. Okay, and now we need to load the resource, so we'll do this. Var image is internal function load, and we need to load the resource. We can simply drag this resource into these brackets to create the correct path. Perfect. And now we already have a texture, so this time we simply use set shader parameter. Again, it was second texture, copy, paste, and the value is simply image. And again, click second image, click the first one. Great. Thank you for watching. This effect was more on the simpler side. Next time I'll try something more complicated again. And thanks for all the support on my channel. Take care and see you in the next video.